Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast, where talk is all about the West. This episode is brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and produced by Cowboy Spirit USA. National parks. We love them, treasure them, visit them, preserve them. Today, Marie Buck, CEO of Western National Parks, speaks with Russell and Alan about the role her organization plays in 70 parks located across the West.
Well, Alan, kind of a hot Saturday morning, and we've been lucking out all May and June, so summer's finally here, I think.
Spring has sprung, fall has fell, summer's here, and it's hot as hell.
I've never heard that, but it is true.
It works.
So season 4 begins today. It's pretty cool.
Well, I'm thrilled with that. It's hard to believe that 4 years have slid past, and I've just thoroughly enjoyed every session we've had. So I'm tickled to be here.
Yeah, well, it's all thanks to the great guests and Stan and Lynn and Suzanne getting it all put together for us. Our guest today is talking about a topic that I think is big in everybody's minds and hearts. That's national parks. And this is the Western National Parks Organization. We were at part of the national park system yesterday. One of our favorite places in Arizona, Tumacacri. I forget what they call it, but it's not a monument or national park, but it's part of that system. I got to use my lifetime pass, which Laura's parents bought me, so that was fun. And Reagan loved it, and that's where Laura got her citizenship, sitting on the lawn in front of that 300-year-old mission. 300-year-old site, and that old mission, she got her citizenship, became an American right there. So we love going there.
Well, I have a lot of warm feelings about our national park system, and just finished a long, really good book about the Grand Canyon Park and National Park, and so I'm well in tune with our park system and appreciate it more than I can tell you.
Well, as controversial as life today is, I don't think national parks attach much controversy. But today, Marie Buck is with us. She's the CEO of Western National Parks. She started that position in July 22. Before that, she was Chief Operating Officer for the Grand Canyon Conservancy. Prior to that, she was Senior Director of Business Operations at Phoenix Raceway. That's NASCAR. Holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from Arizona State University. She's taken 30 whitewater rafting trips down the Colorado River, and she loves sharing that passion with others as a guide. You know, I will say, I'm in hospitality. I've never heard a negative word about those raft trips down the canyon. It just seems like it's universally appealing. And what she loves about her work is creating life-changing experiences for others. And of course, she's in the right job to do that.
Well, how cool to have a job that is creative and good, and you get to go down raft trips and enjoy it at the same time.
I haven't made it there yet. So, Marie, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time this morning.
Well, it's your time. We appreciate.
How do you schedule so many trips down the river, Marie? You can call them work, but that's the right kind of work, at least.
Well, I've been doing it for a long time, so it's typically one trip every summer. So it ends up being my working vacation. So I've been doing it for a long, long time, and it never gets old, and it's always a new and amazing experience every time.
Do you do a lot of people on a trip, or a few, or all kinds of trips? Describe one, would you? One of your favorites.
So a typical trip for us will be about 18 days on the water, starting at Lee's Ferry and going all the way to Lake Mead. And we'll have 16 clients typically. and then there'll be about 8 of us who are the crew. And so, we're there to help them experience the hikes, experience the water and the rapids and, all the cultural and historical resources and information that the Colorado River and Grand Canyon has to offer.
And your typical client, if you would, your passenger on your trip, are they young? Are they old? Are they educated? What brings them to sign on for a trip? Do you have a description of your?
So it's kind of all of the above. It's typically a bucket list item. It's something that for one reason or another, an individual has really decided that they just really want to go rafting down the Grand Canyon. It might be a celebration of a milestone birthday or an anniversary, or like even in my case, my first river trip, my father and I went as guests celebrating graduation from college. That was our first trip. So it really is very diverse in terms of who's going down the river, but it's always a life-changing experience for them.
Well, that sounds like Dude Ranch guests. Everybody always asks us, who's your guest? And we say everybody. It's
right,
just literally everybody. You said 2 words that I think are interesting. No one would be surprised about the natural beauty aspect of the trips that you're talking about. I mean, that's pretty. I mean, if you don't get that, you're probably not going. But you also talked about the historical and the cultural. Give us some ideas of those aspects of the trip.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 11 indigenous tribes that are associated with the Grand Canyon area and the Colorado Plateau. And this part of the country, holds a very special place, in their hearts and in their culture and in their history. And so when you experience the Colorado River, you are essentially on their lands, where they have existed for thousands and thousands of years. And that's just really important to recognize and be respectful of as you enjoy the experience, because, these people were here long before us, and these places hold sacred meanings, and then there's lots of historical, background as well, whether you look at the Cole brothers and what they did to expand tourism in the canyon, or you look at Mary Jane Coulter and some of the architecture that she did. It's just a wide variety of historical information and just cultural significance to the canyon.
And the Indians, the tribe at the bottom is the Havasupai? Am I getting that wrong?
Well, the Havasupai live in Havasupai Canyon, but you also have the Wallapai, who run Grand Canyon West and some of the tours on the lower part of the canyon. But you have the Navajo, the Zuni, the Hopi. I think there's 5 different bands of the Paiute. So there's just a wide variety of again, indigenous communities with very strong cultural ties to Grand Canyon.
How many people live in the canyon itself?
Well, Grand Canyon National Park, technically, you don't live in the canyon. So you have Grand Canyon Village on the south and north rims, where you have up top, where you have, a lot of Park Service staff, a lot of concessionaire staff, a lot of like conservancy staff, people that work in and for the canyon. So technically in the park itself, you don't have anyone living full time. Now, when you talk about the Havasupai and the Wallapai, especially in Havasupai and Havasu Canyon, I don't know the exact number of folks that actually live in Havasupai Village.
And the Grand Canyon West, of course, that's where they have that walkway that
yes.
is somewhat well known.
The Skywalk, yes.
The Skywalk, that's the name.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, amongst other things for people to do, for sure.
Right. So, are you here at the headquarters in Tucson, the Western National Parks? headquarters?
Yeah, I'm based out of Tucson, out of our home office. I live in Casa Grande, so I'm about 40 minutes away. And Casa Grande is incidentally where WNPA began in 1938. We began as a publishing company to support the Park Service when they, had limited resources because of the Great Depression. So it's kind of fun to live in the town in which WNPA was born.
Well, how many parks are part of that group?
So we have 70 partnered parks located in 12 different states.
And you're the central. You're where your office is runs all of those.
Yes, well, the home office definitely supports all of our partner parks. With between our infrastructure and our warehousing, and our retail, and then of course we have very talented staff out in the field who are operating the visitor center retail stores where we are putting out interpretive materials and products for visitors of the park to purchase and to take home and to kind of commemorate that experience they had at the park. And by doing that, they're actually contributing back to the park because the revenue that we generate then goes back to those parks to help them fund projects that they might not have funding to do.
How many guests a day, a week, a month do you service?
It varies because it depends on the park. So like when you think of like Tumacacori, the season at Tumacacori is, kind of like the snowbird season, right? From, October to May, but in the summer visitation slows down. But at some of our other parks, they're really busy right now, like Carlsbad Caverns, the Great White Sand Dunes. So I can tell you that on an annual basis, in 22, we estimated we had 26 million visitors come through our 70 parks. And that's out of over 400 million throughout the entire system for the year.
That's astounding.
It is when you think about it that way.
Do you feel overwhelmed or you're able to handle that? Or, I sit here and listen to that and I think, how in the world, that's so many footprints. I can't even fathom that.
Well, I don't know if I would say we're overwhelmed. Again, we have, really talented staff and we work in partnership with the Park Service and, sometimes it's really busy and sometimes, it's a little slower. The kind of neat thing about all of our different parks is not only do we have some big parks, think about Saguaro National Park, very large, very popular park, but we have some really small I call them small but mighty parks that they're not really known, but they still provide such an amazing visitor experience that, if you don't want to be in the crowds, go to one of our small parks, or pick a few of them and make a day of it. There's just so many different experiences to be had.
Tell me your favorite small park. I want to hear.
Inappropriate question, but still a good one.
I always get in trouble with this question because, I don't want to show any favoritism.
Yeah, you can't, but do it anyway.
Okay, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to defer all the calls to you. I will say that in Arizona, Wupatki National Monument is one of my favorite parks. And I just think it's such a it's easy to access, first of all. You don't have to be a strong hiker, to check out, the cultural sites and the archaeological sites. But they do offer some behind the scenes tours for people who might want to do an overnight backpacking trip and go see some sites that the general public doesn't get to see. And they offer that through a lottery. And I've done that a couple times and it's really special, very meaningful. And it's up in that Colorado Plateau area, which I just love, and the colors. It's a very special place.
And I'd really confirm that. Isn't that tied in with Sunset Crater?
Sunset Crater is about 20 miles away. Mm-hmm.
But aren't they managed in some sort of cooperative deal or something?
Yeah. So Sunset Crater and Wupatki are typically handled by, the Park Service has their staff, and they sort of divide and conquer. But because those parks are so close to one another, you have folks that are overseeing both. And then both of those parks, are our partner parks. So we're there as well.
Well, I had never gone. I'd sort of been given bad information that they weren't that good, and spent a lot of time in Flagstaff over the years. I agree with you 100% that Wapaki is so accessible, and you kind of drive around and get to the different sites. And Sunset Crater, even though you can't go to the crater, the lava field, and they're absolutely worth a visit. And at least when I've been there, which was kind of peak season, they weren't overwhelmed at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're great. And, you don't have too far from Sunset and Wapaki. You also have Walnut Canyon National Monument, which is another, literally like 5 minutes outside of Flagstaff. And that is another beautiful park, easy to access.
Yeah, we just did that not very long ago with our little daughter, and took her on the whole hike, and it was very good. What are the programs? So your group started out as a publication organization. You're doing the retail side. What are all the services you help the parks with?
So not only with the publication, and the retail experience inside the visitor center at the park itself, I think it's just really important to mention that, when you come into the visitor center, you don't really know who's Park Service and who's WNPA, and it doesn't really matter. Our people are there to help the visitors have the best experience, and that doesn't mean just selling them, a book or a memento, but they answer questions about the trail. They know, interpretive information. They're right there shoulder to shoulder with the Park Service. And that's one of those programs or services that we offer that it's a little bit intangible. You don't really think about it, but it's really, really important. And our folks really care about the visitor experience and care about the parks. And then not only that, down at the home office, from October through May, we resumed our in-office programming, which, was suspended due to COVID, like so many other things, but we resumed that in full this past year. So we have programs at the home office for local folks to come hear speakers, hear authors. We show movies about parks. We've had the Hubble Trading Post come down and do Navajo rug talks, and talk about Native American jewelry and crafts. So that's another that's local programming that we've been able to provide the Tucson area, along with being a very large participant in the Tucson Festival of Books, where we bring our park partners out, and we set up the National Park Pavilion, which is a great area for families and kids to experience the parks in different ways, whether they're looking at animal skulls or animal hides, or they're doing some type of junior ranger activity. We sponsor an author tent where, we have moderated author panels talking about their books. And then we bring our whole retail experience to the Tucson Festival of Books. And that's something we've been really proud to be a strong partner with the Tucson community in. And then one of the other things that isn't as well known, in fact, I didn't really know the extent of it until I came on board, was research projects that we fund. So,
well, let's come back to those. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back with the research programs.
That sounds great.
Alan, we were talking, it's kind of warmed up a little, but it's still, they're riding early, and we had, 37 people out on the ride this morning. We had, more than that for breakfast ride last week. We schedule for the temperatures, and so White Stallion Ranch, it's the time to come if that's when you're available for your vacation. And we've got a lot going on. It's all the same stuff.
Well, you told me last week that this is your slow time, but it's not slow. So
yeah, it's not. I guess that's good. Well, it is, especially if you're a guest. We're busy this week, and then it does taper off for July and August. And, still the families are coming. The international travel hasn't quite returned, but it's an affordable time to get the full 100% dude ranch experience. There's really not much that I can think of that we don't do in the summer that we do in the height of the season. All the rides and activities go as usual. I think we don't do wine and cheese because the cheese melts or something. But other than that, we just kind of adjust timing wise, and the whole thing goes.
Well, it's been pretty good up till now, but today it's scheduled to spike up to 110. We've been pretty good up to this point.
Really has been. And even today, we're going to do it all.
Yeah. Good.
So, Marie, back to research programs. We talked a lot about the great Festival of Books here in Tucson and your significant role. You also mentioned research.
Yes. So every year we have a research and scholarship grant cycle that we open up to our partner parks where, the parks will come up with a project, whether it's like, for example, Saguaro National Park is doing some studying around the desert tortoise. So they applied for a research grant for us. So we were happy to be able to give them the funds to do this additional research around, the migration and the travels of the desert tortoise. And so that's something that not all cooperating associations do. I think we're rather unique in that. And that's just having that ability to provide extra funding again for the parks to conduct research into areas, whether it's scientific, it could be around untold stories and historical information. But I'm really proud of that. And every year we manage to increase the funding that we can provide. And I'm just really proud of that.
So if I'm somebody interested in what you're saying, how do I tune into that? What's the avenue to go to get into what you're talking about?
So you want to go to our website,
which is?
You want to go to WNPA.org. And we have a tab on there that talks about our research. And then once we open the cycle, the information will be there on how to apply and what the criteria are. And we put it out, to the press and media. It just doesn't get picked up that much. But we also, we'll post it on LinkedIn and on our social channels when those cycles are open.
Very good. Different track. What is your group and what are the national parks trying to convey to their 400 million visitors nationwide?
Right. Yeah. Well, so I think it's we just really want people to understand that the national parks, they're there for folks to enjoy, to learn from, to grow, and to protect. And when I look at our list of partner parks in these 12 states, guaranteed there's a park near you and your family, or like right now, that you could go to. So we really believe that, people going to parks just have this amazing opportunity to just connect and to heal, and put themselves in a different place, get out of the rat race, get out of, the stress, and just immerse yourself in a different experience. And, and as we do that, it helps us all, have that sense of belonging. It also helps foster stewardship and caring, and everybody's got a different kind of park story to tell. You talked about mine a little bit with whitewater river rafting, but we all have a different but equally important park story to tell.
I heard that the COVID virus spiked the visitor numbers. Is that true?
We definitely saw increased visitation from our domestic markets during COVID. So once the parks started reopening, after the initial COVID shutdown, we just saw a tremendous increase of local visitors. So at many parks, a lot of visitors came internationally. But after COVID, American families wanted to, pile up in the cars and get out, do some road trips. And our parks definitely benefited from that. And I think now we're starting to see visitation return to pre-COVID levels. But yeah, and it depends on too,
What about you mentioned international? Is there a statistic? I assume you have a known statistic of what it was and what it is, percentage wise?
I don't have a known statistic off the top of my head.
Is it significant?
Yeah, definitely. Some of the larger parks like Grand Canyon, there's definitely, you could see, tourists coming in from abroad, in tour buses in large quantities. That is definitely a significant statistic for visitation, but I don't have the exact number. I apologize.
Do you have parks where you've set a number that you want or that you can handle and that people are exceeding that, or you're worried that they would exceed, and how do you handle that?
So that's really managed through the National Park Service. And you see that happen with the large parks that typically aren't in our portfolio. So like with the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone, their visitation in the summer in the high seasons is so high that they have to do things like have park and ride shuttle service. Some parks have tried reservation systems. But fortunately for us, our portfolio of parks, we don't have the big iconic ones. So again, you come to one of the parks in our portfolio, you're not going to experience that overuse or over visitation as much as you would at some of the iconic parks.
Who decided what parks go in what portfolio and other parks in a different portfolio? How did that all shake out?
Well, so I think that was just a process of growth over the years. When we started, we were supporting 17 national monuments and then just have grown through the years. And the process to become a partner park with Western National Parks Association really starts with the Park Service. We don't go out and cultivate parks to become, part of our portfolio. We work very collaboratively with the National Park Service. They would identify a park that needs a cooperating association, and then we'd start conversations about what does that look like? How can we be supportive? And does it make sense? So it's kind of an organic process.
Are there more parks that fit your portfolio that are still out there that could join?
There could be.
What's in your 70 parks, what's the most visited? Do you know?
Well, right now, Saguaro National Park is having really high visitation. Carlsbad Caverns as well. Also, Montezuma's Castle has been very, very busy. And in Colorado, the Great Sand Dunes National Park has been very busy as well.
Do you have upper limits that if you bump those limits, you're going to start to restrict, or do you think you can handle everybody that comes?
I think we've got it. I think we can handle those who come.
Excellent.
But take the lead from the Park Service. So if the Park Service were to make a decision at a particular park that something needed to happen due to visitation, we would always partner with them and help them.
Do you, with the Western Parks group, do you have a membership that people can join to support what you're doing?
Oh, I'm so happy that you asked that question. We have our program is called Park Protector. So for $25 a year, you can join and become part of our Park Protector community. And what that does for you is not only does it give you a 10% discount in all of our retail stores at our parks and on our e-commerce, but then you also receive exclusive content, some exclusive products, But your $25 is directly supporting all of these different partner parks. And it's a really, really great community of folks who just care about, the American West and protecting parks.
Is there a place, a number that if you exceed that number, then the parks start to go downhill? Do you work with a number like that we can handle up to X amount?
That's kind of park determined, right?
Well,
Yeah.
Is there a number, and do you work with that, and how do you manage that kind of question?
Well, and again, we really, we follow the Park Service's lead, and to this point in time, during normal operations, we haven't been in a scenario where we've had to say, okay, we've hit this number now, operations need to change. But COVID was a great example. Well, COVID wasn't great, so that didn't come out right. But, during the pandemic, when we had all of the social distancing, all of the physical, modifications to the visitor centers that needed to be made to make things safe for visitors and staff, that was a really great example of, the Park Service came up with, here's how many people can be in a building, and then we would work with them to monitor that and make sure we were in compliance. And if we exceeded that, then we'd hold, we wouldn't let people in. So that's just kind of like a real world example of, managing to a number, which is different for every park. It's not consistent under a certain situation.
So what about wildfires?
Well, and it's that season now, right? We're unfortunately starting to see wildfires pop up here and there. And so wildfire management is typically, it is managed by the National Park Service. It's an interagency approach, depending on, where they're located. But we've had impact from wildfires. Sunset Crater Volcano National Monument was impacted last year by the fire, in Flagstaff. And, there was, when that was really lighting off and we had our staff, the Park Service staff, the county, even other parks sent in resources, but everybody pulled together to do what was needed to evacuate people, staff, cultural artifacts that, were very, very important just to protect the area. And we were closed for quite some time until, it was safe to reopen that park. So wildfires are definitely a risk. There's definitely mitigation that is done, whether it's prescribed burns or other types of things, but, you can't control Mother Nature. And the drought certainly hasn't helped any of that.
Well, a pat on your back. Just yesterday in the news, a wildfire started. You guys got around it and contained it and put it out, and it totaled 70 acres. And it started and got contained right then, right there.
Well,
and
I think
so a pat on your back for that.
And I think as a dude rancher, a lot of our ranches are really vulnerable to fires, and it's been a growing insurance issue. And it's interesting to watch the Forest Service, which is, of course, a different agency. But I think there's some new approaches to wildfire. There's just, as you mentioned, drought and et cetera. Is different subject. Is Chiricahua National Monument part of your group?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What is, I keep hearing that it may get pushed forward to be a national park. Do you know the status of that, or is that even true?
That is true. The status I know is probably the same as you, that it is, Senator Mark Chelly, they're definitely pushing for that. But we don't know exactly when, or if that will happen for certain. But we sure hope that it does.
Do you think that'd be a good thing?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, it's funny, few things. As it was part of the driving force to make that a national monument was by the folks that owned Faraway Dude Ranch, which is now part of the monument there at the entry area. And there's some buildings you can tour, and That was one of the very early dude ranches, I think in the 1916, 17, somewhere in there. And, my mother always said she preferred Chiricahua to Grand Canyon by a large measure. It really is a beautiful area.
It's very unique. It's absolutely gorgeous.
So deserving, I'm sure, of park status. How about Painted Desert Petrified Forest? Is that part of your group? I'm an Arizonan.
That is not part of our group. We have Petroglyph National Monument in New Mexico, but we do not have the Painted Forest.
Interesting.
Have you visited all the parks?
Oh, not yet. I mean, I've only been on board for a year. I've been to 27 parks, and I hope to get to all the parks in the next, I would say 2 years is probably fair.
Is that on your own, or are they urging you to go to all the parks as part of your job?
Well, it is part of my job because it's really important to connect with the Park Service at the park and also to support our team that's out there and to see our partner parks and understand more about them. And, you can read about them online, but it doesn't substitute for being there in person and experiencing the park.
So a tourist from Switzerland or someplace like that arrives here and grabs you and says, where should I go? Give me your premier place that I should go to get my taste of Western USA. Where would you send them?
You're beating her up on these selection questions, hard. Man.
Well, would you have an answer? Or would you shove them off to someone else or tell them to read a book?
I would not shove them off. My first question would be, how much time do you have? Because that's really important.
Yeah.
But if they had maybe only a couple of days and they were here in Arizona, I recommend, that maybe they do a tour of northern Arizona, starting, with Montezuma, going to Tuzagut, hitting the parks we talked about like Walnut, Wupaki, Sunset Crater. And then, we have 3 parks that are located on the Navajo Nation, including Hubble Trading Post, Navajo Monument, and Canyon de Chelly. And if they had time to do all of that, I think that would be a really amazing experience.
That really, I haven't been to all of those, and embarrassed I've never been to Canyon de Chelly, but those would really give them a good taste. The other thing that we want to be sure to remind people is they can also go, if they're in Tucson, to your headquarters. You've got a good gift shop. You've got some
really pretty building.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
And some good programs that are back up and running. And for $25, you can be a park protector. I wish we were one, because my wife spent some money in the gift shop there yesterday at Tumacacri, and we could have gotten that good discount. And also they can go to the WNPA.org. I always want to remind people, ORG, WNPA.org, to get the information. Is that right, Marie?
Yes, that is correct.
And there's places there they can contact and also join and become a park protector.
Absolutely. And if you're in a park, in one of our visitor centers, you can join and sign up right at the park as well.
Excellent.
Well, we've thoroughly enjoyed getting some information from you, and I'm sure our listeners, if they're interested at all in lands in the West, have gotten an earful.
Well, I really appreciate your time. It's great conversation about parks, and I hope you're able to get to some more of our parks.
Yep, that's our challenge right now internally. We love that idea, and I'm a grandpa-age daddy of a 5-year-old, and that's part of her education, we view. So we're working on that, and we love the little parks because we're not always big fans of crowds. So we're gonna follow your 70 parks around the West. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
And thank you, Alan and Russell and Melissa. Again, another fascinating program about what's going on, how the Western way of life is pressing on and working on. And again, we are here to help you have an inner cowboy experience from time to time. And so thank you very much. And we do thank you for listening to the Cowboy Up podcast and for supporting us, telling other people about us, and for your sponsorship of the program. Please, thank you very much, and keep it up. And you know, this is kind of a special weekend in the United States because it is the time of the 4th of July, the Independence Day celebrations. And it's also very special. Many places of worship and many organizations are taking time out after 50 years, since it was 50 years ago that the Vietnam War, the conflict came to somewhat of a failed end. And the problem was many of those veterans who came back, nobody said thank you. Nobody said good job. Nobody said welcome home. In fact, some of them actually found that they were harassed, and even one says that I was even spit upon as I came home. Well, it's time for us, and many of us are now saying let's make up for that. And so I want to join many of the organizations and many of the people who simply are saying to the Vietnam veterans, it may be 50 years too late, but we appreciate your service. We appreciate your service so much. And indeed, finally, welcome home. Welcome home. Welcome home. And blessings on you and your family on this day.
Well, you know, Alan, I love this topic because, it was a little warm at Tumacacra yesterday, but to go look at that mission that was built in the 1800s, and of course they first came in there when Kino came in 1691, and they held worship under a ramada, and then they built a church, which some of the remains are the Jesuits, which he was. And then when they were expelled, the Franciscans actually built Tumacacri, and then it was abandoned in the mid-1800s. So it wasn't really used that long and was actually, like San Javier, never quite finished. But, there were people there, but it wasn't busy, and they have a nice little museum. Those little museums give you such a nice experience without pushing your way through and my dad
being run over by the crowds.
Oh my gosh. And there's a certain atmosphere that I don't always love. I mean, you want to be there because they're great places, Yellowstone, Grand Canyon. My dad always said, go to North Rim, and he's 100% right. It's like a totally different experience. You have to drive a little. But I think you get to these smaller parks. They're all parks for a reason.
Yeah. Well, I thoroughly agree with you.
Hey, thanks for joining us for our first episode of Season 4. Got a favorite national park story? We'd love to hear it. Our email is thecowboyuppodcast@gmail.com. A shout out to Stan Houston's production company. Next week, the Cowboys chat with Tucsonan Tom Heath, author of a new book that takes readers on a streetcar ride around town. Be sure to join us. Until then, I'm Lynn Weezy Sneed, reminding you to sit tall and ride safe.
Storm rolled in from the western sky. 2,000 head of steers took flight. Good night paid those boys to ride, and by damn they would, though some might die. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years ago and strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. She's 10 years old on a stout bay horse, 300 years they guide her course from the Spanish quest to the blue and gray, to what we call the cowboy way. Don't say goodbye,
don't say goodbye
to the cowboy way,
to the cowboy way.
Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years ago and strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Rawhide and steel, hooves and horns, legacy to the yet unborn. A code that comes from a hard-lived life. Your destiny when you're born to ride. Don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Tradition lives, and it's here to stay. 100 years and growing strong today. So don't say goodbye to the cowboy way. Don't say goodbye, don't say goodbye to the cowboy way.
And once again, a Cowboy Up podcast thank you to Jim Jones and his posse for our theme song, one of our favorite songs for our present and even for your inner cowboy experience.